So, welcome to Christmas time. And what I want to be talking to you this morning is about some of the questions of Christmas. And these aren't like special, like really spiritual or theological questions like how many wise men actually were there, or how many angels were there, or why didn't Joseph make reservations before going to the inn, right? I mean, what father forgets it? Anyway, what I want to talk to you about this month is about the questions of Christmas, really practical questions about Christmas, because this morning, Christmas is a trap. Christmas is a trap. And so I have gotten into a trap this morning, the trap of, Christmas decorations and getting all decorated and putting up Christmas tree lights and decorations. I mean, it's just all a trap. It's one of the reasons why we don't have any Christmas decorations, because I fell into a trap. So anyway, so that's one of the Christmas traps is decorations. And then another Christmas trap out there is gift giving and actually gift getting. Like we, so many times we want to give like the most extra special, perfect gift. We hunt and we look and we seek and we finally find it. We finally find that perfect gift, right? And this happened to me when Cal was about 3 years old. I found like this little perfect stuffed animal that would be his, like maybe this would take the place of his binky, because I figured this was just the most perfect gift, and I found it and I gave it to him, and I actually scheduled everything Christmas morning to make sure that his gift was the last one open, because I knew how awesome it would be to see his face light up and go, oh my God, I'm getting rid of my binky finally. And he opens it and goes inside and crushed. So gifting is a trap, and gift getting is also a trap. Like, how many of you, you know exactly what you want Apple Watch, and you've given all sorts of little subtle hints that you want, what it is that you want Apple Watch, and you've told your family just in very subtle ways Apple Watch, and maybe much more other not so subtle ways, like I wonder if they are catching on. And then Christmas comes, and you really are hoping for that Apple Watch, and then you open your presents, and guess what? No Apple Watch. Merry Christmas. Christmas is a trap. The pace and the speed and the busyness of the season, on the one hand, it's great. Like last night was a great Christmas party in downtown Tiberias, and it was fun and everything, and you just know that things just between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day, the accelerator is flying through the month of December. Or maybe it's the commercialization of Christmas, and I got a friend of mine emailed this to me about a color-coded chart of places where you can buy your stuff, okay? Where it's approved by the AFA, where you should buy your stuff. And there's a naughty list and there's a nice list. And you don't want to shop at the naughty list, because if you shop at the naughty list, you might be going anyway. But you want to shop at the nice list. But there are a couple of ironies about this list. So Gap is owned by, Gap owns the Gap, and Gap owns Banana Republic, and Gap owns Old Navy. They're just different stores, all owned by the same company. Well, Banana Republic is on the nice list, and Old Navy is on the naughty list. And the Gap itself is not on the list at all, so I don't know if it's okay to shop at the Gap or not. That's one of the ironies of this list. And the online store for this company that published this list, they're number one. They're the nicest people. So anyway, the commercialization of Christmas, and if you are worried about, keeping Christ in Christmas, this is the way we do it. We avoid and escape the Christmas trap. Oh, you know what? We also have unrealistic expectations for this month and for this time of year, right? For some reason, we have this idea that we want a Victorian era Christmas, right? With snow-covered hills and a Christmas tree with real candles right on it, and like a Dickensian, like a Charles Dickens Christmas, a Christmas carol, that's what we want, right? That's like the image of the ideal Christmas. But I don't know why we would want that Christmas, because you walked around London, it was always smog. Either you were covered in soot 24/7, And, Tiny Tim, if he weren't disabled, he'd be working in a sweat house somewhere rather than home with his family. And Ebenezer Scrooge makes Bob Cratchit work till 7 at night on Christmas Eve. That doesn't make sense. So, anyway, we need to escape these Christmas traps. And the way we escape these Christmas traps this year is to go back to the original story about Christmas and the events leading up to the original story of Christmas. So come back with me. Remember that from Winslow? Come back with me to the original Christmas story. And this is from Luke chapter 1. We're going to look at Zechariah. Now there are 4 Zechariahs in our Bible. 3 of them are in the Old Testament. 1 is in the New Testament. And these 3 Zechariahs in the Old Testament, one was a prophet, and there's a book in the Old Testament named Zechariah, and it's named after him. And there's a priest named Zechariah. He was a pretty cool dude. And then the 3rd guy was a king named Zechariah, and he was not so hot. He only lasted 6 months, and then he was assassinated. But we're not talking about the Old Testament Zechariahs. And does anyone have any friends named Zechariah? Yeah, not a very popular name, but pretty popular in our Bible. But the New Testament Zechariah is who we're going to be talking about this morning. And he was a priest. And he worked at the temple in Jerusalem. And he was an old man. And he was married to a woman named Elizabeth. And they didn't have any children. Now, he was a great guy. His faithfulness and his righteousness was renowned amongst all of the priests and all the believers. But there was something about him that kind of threw people for a loop, because he and his wife didn't have kids. And, they kind of felt like, what did he do or what did she do so that they didn't have kids? Because usually, if you didn't have kids, there's a problem with you. Not just a physical problem, but maybe a sinful problem. So it's sort of scandalous. And he was some kind of sinner, the thought was, if he didn't have kids. He was this old man. And he was randomly selected one day to light incense in the temple. Now, I need to paint this picture for you because worship back then is very different from worship today. Worship today, all the fun happens here, and it's really quiet and peaceful outside, right? And here's where all the action is. Here's where all the people are outside. It's very quiet and peaceful. Nobody's outside. I don't think anyone's outside. Anyway, but it's flip-flop in the 1st century. Outside was where all the action was. Outside was where the big altar, the big basically barbecue, where the worshipers would throw their goats and their sheep and their burnt offerings onto this big huge barbecue, and there'd be smoke and flame flying up, and there would be people singing songs to the Lord. There would be people over here that would be praying to God, that people over here confessing their sins. So all of this action is taking place outside. And it was loud, it was boisterous, and it was crazy. But then on the inside the temple, it was silent. Inside this temple, the temple was beautiful on the inside, and this is the 2nd temple that was rebuilt after the 1st temple was torn down. And the 2nd temple had cedar floors and cedar walls and cedar ceilings, and the walls and the ceiling had hammered bronze all around them and brass. And so there was this kind of shining light on the inside, even though it was really dark. And the floor was beautiful carved cedar. And there was a table over here with 12 loaves of bread. And there was a candelabra over here with 12 candlesticks. And that was lit. And then right in the middle was this little altar of incense. And so Zechariah showed up to do his duty. And to do his work at the temple. And so he lit some incense. And it wasn't incense like this, but it probably smelled a little like this. Because the incense that they used back then was made of gold, was made of frankincense and myrrh. And we'll just let that smoke there. And so to give you kind of a sense of what was happening in the temple. And so Zechariah's in the temple. And he's lit his incense, and now he's going to spend a few moments, quiet moments, away from the hubbub of everything else that's going on outside, just in this peaceful, beautiful place. He's going to spend time with God. And so he prays. And he prays prayers for his people, for God's people, and praying that God would release them from the oppression of the Romans, that God would bring them salvation and hope. He probably prayed prayers for his family and prayed prayers for himself. He may have even asked God to bless them some way, somehow with children. And so in the midst of these prayers and in the midst of the incense going up to God, something crazy happens. An angel appears. Now, I don't think Zechariah knew that it was an angel when it appeared, because, just this flaming bright light just illuminated this beautiful holy place. And the angel, the first 4 words out of the angel's mouth are those 4 words that every angel says, right? Will you say them with me? Do not be afraid. Right. Every angel says, do not be afraid. So Zechariah must have been freaking out. This angel appears. The angel says, do not be afraid. But I've got good news for you, Zechariah. Your wife, Elizabeth, is going to have a baby. And this baby is going to turn people back to repentance, back to the Lord. He is going to prepare the way for the Messiah. This baby, this child of yours is going to be great and wonderful and awesome. And Zechariah, apparently maybe he stopped freaking out just for a moment and had a moment of clarity. And he asks a legitimate question. He asks a question. He says, Gabriel, and the angel did introduce himself. He said, Gabriel, my name is Gabriel, and I'm an angel of the Lord. I've got a message for you. And Zechariah says, well, how can this be? Because I am old. And my wife Elizabeth, she's old. Well, Gabriel, I bet he turned like bright red and burned with anger, and he smote. No, he didn't kill him, but he made Zechariah go mute. So he locked the door and threw away the key. Or he can't talk anymore because he's mute. And I wonder if when Gabriel got back to heaven, if the Lord said, Gabriel, good job. You kind of went a little off script by silencing Zechariah. I wasn't really intending that, but anyway. So Zechariah so the angel Gabriel disappears, and the people outside, the worshipers, are now starting to freak out a little bit because time has elapsed. Much more time has gone on during Zechariah's time in the temple, and people are wondering what in the world has happened to Zechariah, because if you're in there too long, God might actually kill you if you are not worthy. And so they are wondering, people are wondering what in the world is happening to Zechariah. And so he comes out, and they're like, Zechariah, how you doing? What happened? And he's like, Zechariah, I can't understand. And he tries to explain to them that there was this angel. So and I'm sure they would have said, oh, angle. And he's like, yeah, angle. There was an angle in there. No, an angel. Yeah, there was an angel in there. And so they figure that out, and then he says, and they go, oh, your wife Elizabeth. Right. And he goes, and they say, oh, Elizabeth is going to get fat. And for some of you kids, but anyway. Oh, your wife Elizabeth is going to have a baby. And I'm sure they were like, well, how is that going to happen? So anyway, 9 months pass. Elizabeth becomes pregnant, and then she has a baby. And the baby is a boy. And 8 days after his birth, he is circumcised, and at the circumcision ceremony, he is to be named. And the traditional naming process is the firstborn son would be named after the father. And so they said, well, what's his name? And Elizabeth says, well, his name is John. His name is John. Now, Zechariah means God remembers. John means something else, and I'll get to it in a minute. But she's like, no. His name is John. And during one of our community Bible experience groups, this question came up. But I don't think it's tradition for Jewish families to name, after. And here's what I've learned. That in the first century, the oldest son would generally take the father's name as his own. But it would be like a nickname, or like if you know a Zachary, that would be kind of like Zechariah. So variants of the name. Or it would be like Ben Zechariah, or Bar Zechariah, because Ben means son in Hebrew, and Bar means son in Aramaic. And so if you remember Barabbas, he's the criminal that's released instead of Jesus. His name was actually Bar Abbas, meaning son, a guy named Abbas. Or Benjamin, a son of Ben Yamin, not Ben Jamin. Anyway, so that was the typical way that he would be named. Like Zechariah, he would be Ben Zechariah or Bar Zechariah. But she was emphatic. Elizabeth was emphatic. No, his name is John. And so finally, Zechariah himself takes a writing tablet and writes down, his name is John. Maybe he doesn't say it out loud, but he writes it on a tablet. They read it. And then finally, his mouth is open and he can once again speak. He says his name is John. But he doesn't speak. He then sings. And I'll get to that in a minute. But John means God is gracious. And the reason why Zechariah named him John, first of all, the angel told him to. The second reason is that Zechariah knew that he was going to be going into a different career path. See, the son was supposed to take the job of the father, and so he was supposed to go in the family business of being a priest, but Zechariah realized that John's destiny was different. And that's why when we meet John the Baptist later in life, that he is baptizing on the far side of the Jordan River, because he is calling people to repentance. He's telling the people by his symbolic acts that the temple where his dad works is no longer legitimate, that they need a new way of having communion with God, and that communion with God is going to come through the Messiah, who is Jesus Christ. And so Zechariah sings this song, and I've asked Novi to come up and read this song. He's not going to sing it, but he's going to read it. And thank you.
His father Zechariah was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied, "Praise to be the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets of long ago. Salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, and show mercy to our ancestors and remember his holy covenant. The oath he swore to our father Abraham to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear in holiness and righteousness before him all 4 days. And you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, and guide our feet into the path of peace. And the child grew and became strong in spirit, and he lived in the wilderness until he appeared publicly to Israel."
Amen. Thank you. Well done. Nice. I think this song has got a little bit of John the Baptist in him. But the point is this. There are 3 little things that I want you to take away from this song that Zechariah sang. The first is that God rescues us. That's what these words like redeemed and forgive, and obviously rescue and salvation, that God rescues us in his mercy. Now, God doesn't just rescue us, but God rescues us for a purpose, that we have a job to do, that we have something that we have to accomplish. And here it is, that we are to serve him in holiness and righteousness. We are to serve him in holiness and righteousness. That's the point. That is why we are saved, so we can serve him in holiness and righteousness. So what is holiness? What is righteousness? Well, the way to think about holiness is all about worship. Holiness is all about worship. So think about the 10 Commandments. The first 4 are, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no idols. Don't misuse the name of the Lord. And remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. So holiness is all about worship. And so you guys have done a great job of enabling your holiness this morning by getting your booty here to worship. And actually, holiness is easy. All you need to do is worship one day a week, and not one day a month, but one day a week. And just be generous with what God has given you. And maybe spend some time with Him each day, whether praying or in His Word, or maybe a little bit of both. And that's how you can maintain your vertical relationship with God, through worship, and through generosity, and through prayer. That's how you maintain this holiness, this vertical relationship with God. And it's pretty easy when we really think about it. But righteousness is different. Righteousness really means having right relationships with those around us. And that's what the other half of the Ten Commandments are all about. Honor your father and mother, do not murder, do not steal, do not commit adultery, do not lie, do not covet. All of those things are having right relationships with those around us. And Jesus, when He came, He made righteousness even tougher. Because He said it's not just enough to avoid murder, which I think most of us have done a pretty good job at. And it's not enough to avoid, committing adultery or not stealing and those types of things. Like, we do a good job of avoiding those things. But Jesus said what we really need to do, if we are really going to live righteously and rightly with those around us, we need to do two things. We need to forgive the way God has forgiven us. And we need to love, even love our enemies.
Amen.
So Jesus, having this holiness, this vertical relationship is easy, but this horizontal relationship, this right relationship with those around us, this righteousness is hard. But the good news, and in fact the great news, is that we've been saved, we've been redeemed, we've been delivered, we have been freed, we have been rescued, so that God can empower us to live righteous and holy lives. And when we do that, we can unleash God's light and peace. We can shine with God's light. We can bring God's peace. That's the promise of Zechariah's song, that when we live lives of holiness and righteousness, then we can shine God's light and bring God's peace. So here's how we're going to do that this morning and this week. I want everyone to close your eyes. And in this quiet moment, just imagine that you are in the temple with Zechariah. It's quiet, it's peaceful. The aroma of the incense is heading up to heaven. Maybe you're praying. And in the midst of your prayer, the Lord brings to you an image of someone in your life that you need to bring some reconciliation to, some forgiveness to. That in most of our broken relationships, it's a two-way street. Someone did something and you did something else, and back and forth, and then it's broken. Well, who in your life do you need to be reconciled to? Now, you may not have anyone in your head right now, and as I was working on this sermon all week this week, I didn't have an image of anyone until 6:45 this morning, and then I went, oh, there it is. But I think each one of us, if we're serious, there's someone in our lives that we can reconcile with. And I think that brings us to three different groups of people. The first group is the person that you need to reconcile. Maybe he lives out of town, away from here some distance. And if the person you need to reconcile with is that person, then what I'd like you to do is this week, maybe even today when you get home from church, is write a letter and say, "Dear old friend, I had a vision. It wasn't an angel, but I had a vision. Your face came to my head during worship this morning, and my pastor says I need to send you this letter because I want God's light to shine. I want to bring God's peace. So I'm writing this letter to you because I want to live a righteous life." And write a letter. Don't send a text. Don't call. Just write a handwritten letter. That would be best. Even if your penmanship isn't very good, just write that letter and send it and see what happens. So that can be kind of hard to write that letter. So if your friend, your old friend that you need to reconcile with is a little bit closer, let's say within an hour's driving distance, and here's what I'd like you to do when you get home today. Send them a text, send them an email, give them a call on the phone, and invite them for a meal. to grab dinner, or to grab a cup of coffee, or to grab a beer together. And then just get together with them, and you don't have to hash out the past. You don't have to go over what's happened before. You know, that's water under the dam, or over the bridge, or under the, whatever it goes, wherever the water goes. But, you know, it's just old. Leave the past in the past, and just move into the future. Just say, you know, let's forget about the past, and let's be friends again. Because when we can be friends again, when we can forgive one another, when we can bring this reconciliation, we can shine God's light, and we can bring God's peace.